Thank you, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. I've always wanted to be a vet. I never had the chance, but I've had a chance to do a lot of the stuff. And it happens that way. So we're going to talk about wild parrot release, which is not something that's easily done. And we're also going to be showing you a great video. The release is first released back into the wild. This is an eclectus parrot. It's a female in the nest. I've been going to Indonesia now for 14 years. I speak the language and I love the place. It's like a second home. But some people don't know much about Indonesia. First of all, it's the largest island country in the world, with over 17,500 islands, of only which 6,000 are inhabited. So it's a big, big area. It's also the #1 biggest Muslim population in the world, with about 210 million people. It's very interesting to work there as a woman, because women in that culture are treated a little bit differently. So there's a lot of cultural differences from different parts of the archipelago that you have to go in and learn the customs. You always have to be very, very respectful of the character. But they're great people. I love it. I mean, I really love being there. Indonesia's size, its tropical climate, and archipelagic geography supports the world's highest second level of biodiversity. Brazil is #1, Indonesia is #2. It's really huge. There's also 65,000 miles of coastline. That's because there's so many islands, and that contributes to another level, higher level of biodiversity. So there's everything there that you could ever think of. It's just, I've never been to anything quite like it. Now, just to show you the diverse people, population is 300 different races, and there are about 750 languages spoken across the islands. In the beginning part of the islands, when you're starting over with Bali, the people were more Asian. As you move central to the archipelago, they're a little bit more, they look a little bit sort of like Asian Hispanic kind of look. And by the time you get to Papua, they're very, very black. And sometimes they have blonde hair as well. It's also in the Valley of Fire. So there are 150 active volcanoes there at any given time. I've been in 7-point, 8-point earthquakes out in the forest. So and of course, tsunamis are actually common over there. It's nothing really new. That big tsunami, the one time everybody thought it was the end, they've been doing it, it's been happening a long time. Now, a little about us. Our success has been in conserving, protecting, and preserving critically endangered species of parrot populations. And we do it by working at the grassroots level of the local community. We've been doing it since 2001. And one of the ways we did this is we realized that one of the things that's important when you're working on the ground, with the local community, is that you need to be able to engage them and help them to find sustainable means of income. Because these people are really, really poor. They were trapping, and they're not really doing the smuggling. They're trappers. Sometimes they don't have enough food to feed their children. And when these birds and animals come nearby, it was real easy to just take a few and send them to market and make a little bit of money. So what we did is we sat down and we started in Seram, which is a place I'm going to talk about today. And we sat down with the local king, and we all sat around in a big, it's called an adat, and talked about what we could do, what could we do for them, what could they do for us. The very first year they asked for a typewriter. Remember those things? And we started opening conversations, and the next thing you know, we had found a way to develop that community. It was ecotourism. It's a beautiful place. So we curtailed about the 4 or 5 biggest trappers that were in the area. One of them is now the current king. And we made a deal with them. We said, okay, if we stop trapping, we're going to bring guests here. We're going to bring in a clinic and some medical care, and let's try to work together so nobody gives you money, but it's a win-win for both sides. And we started that program in 2001. As early as 2001, we started taking people over to the archipelago. That also meant that we had to start collaborating with local community people like the National Park, the Forestry Service, the Indonesian Institute of Science, the police. It's bad. So, I'll see a soldier walking, I'll have a bird chained to a perch, and he's carrying an AK-47. Look at me. Do you think I can go up to him and say, take that bird? I can't do it. They'll kill me. So you have to find ways to get local people on the ground to kind of work with you. We've done a lot of undercover investigations too to kind of find where it's all going to happen. So we get started. We've got this kind of eco-tour stuff going on. Then the next thing you do is you have to educate the community at the children's level. So we get local stakeholders and they train the kids in conservation. We give them coloring books. We do lots of lessons, and then we do questionnaires afterwards to see if we've actually been effective. And we have recently, I would say, the last time, I think we've gotten just under about 9,000 students from kindergarten all the way to the university level. And the more you can educate the local people, the more they're proud of their animal, the less likely to take it. Again, economic development is extremely important to these people. On Masa Lembu, which is an island that we just came back from, an average person might make $40 a month if they're lucky. And most people aren't going to make that. So they're hungry, they're trying to figure out what to do, we have to find ways. So habitat restoration, mangrove is a really important item in Indonesia. It's a great tree, it's a food for cockatoos and parrots, it's a food for people, and also it's the major wood that they use for building. There's lots of trees in the rainforest, but many are not suitable for building. So they tear down these mangrove trees to build churches or build their buildings, and all of a sudden there isn't any. Mangroves also needs to support the aquaculture. It supports fish farming and all kinds of other things. So it all ties together and it brings food in. So we do a lot of planting of mangroves. We do organic farming. We find ways to bring in corn subsidies and also healthcare issues for the people, because there's a lot of places when we go to, when you look at that map, we'll talk about this just for one moment. We have a bird called the Abadi cockatoo. There's a flyer over there for it. There are only 20 left in the world. They're on one small island deep in the Java Sea, and just to get there, you have to go, Lisa went there with me not too long ago, you have to go really far. It's a 15-hour, first you fly to survive, then you take a 6-hour car ride, then you spend the night, then you take a 15-hour ferry boat ride in the open ocean in the Java Sea, that's where the plane went down, or this time we went in a cargo boat, which is real nasty. Then you spend the night on another island, and then you have to go by open fishing boat in the Java Sea for another 2 to 3 hours to get to the island. And about 4 months of the year, it's completely, you can't get there at all. But the root of the problem is that because Indonesia is number 2 in fauna and all animals, it's a target. Back in 1982, we did the Wild Bird Conservation Act here in the United States, which stopped export here, but many other countries are still going after all those animals. You're not allowed to keep or have pet cockatoos that are on the critically endangered species list there, but everybody does. And you'll find all kinds of other birds too, tons of them, macaws, African greys, all kinds of other citizens, because they're not considered, they're not considered part of the country. Pet bird trade, of course, and trapping and smuggling is extremely commonplace. It is not what people think. I was very naive the first time I went to Indonesia. I thought, oh, you know, there's nothing. It's horrible. It's rampant, and nothing is left alone. And again, a lot of critically endangered CITES 1 birds. Now, here's an example. Pet birds are not pet birds. They're wild caughts. They're normally chained to perches, and they don't get anything good to eat. Usually rice, sweet tea. Nothing. There's nothing for them to do. They can't fly. They just sit there. And the black-capped lory, this is in Papua, is a beautiful, beautiful bird, and they're very aggressive and funny, and they play. And this is a guy that's in the wild, and they don't get what they need to eat. And nutrition is something that I'm going to ask you guys about as we go along, because I'm not a vet, and I need help. So suggestions would be great. Just another example, here's a king parrot. This is the Amboina king parrot. Beautiful bird sitting there eating bananas, but if you look at it a little closer, look, he's sitting on a snare. You see the snare? Fishing line? Now this bird was very lucky. He managed to fly away before he got caught in the snare, but we went back and tore out the snares, and people will still continually, this is even right next to our rescue center, like 2 miles away. So people, you have to keep re-educating people all the time. They just see birds and they see money. And most of the birds that get confiscated or get trapped, about 60% of them die before they ever get anywhere. It's sad. So what happened? We started having this ecotourism program, and we had an eco-tour in 2004. I took out, and there was this thing that happened. And you can actually see it on video today, but we ended up getting hold of some birds that had been trapped in the illegal trade, And we started what was going to be a small rescue center. It got really, really big. We went from a couple of forest cages to about 50 to 60 major flight cages, and we started releasing birds back into the wild. Now, the way to do that is really challenging. You have to have a good protocol of medical testing, you have to quarantine them, you have to socialize them, you have to rehabilitate them, and we're really proud to say we did a survey this last October. We released over 1,200 birds back into the wild. So you can do it, but it's challenging because sometimes they come up to some pretty hard things. So wild parrots. This is a Moluccan cockatoo. We didn't have any towels in the forest, so we took our sarong and ripped it up and made a little birdie burrito out of them. So initially we're going to do a medical exam and disease testing. We will monitor wild behavior. That's important. And we, of course, we quarantine. So we have a quarantine area. The birds go into quarantine. We're going to watch them. We're going to test them, make sure they're okay. And then we have to make sure that they're wild. They will not survive if they don't have the skills that they need. So they have to be able to eat forest food and be scared of people and fly well. Then what we do is we move them into socialization cages, which are really large ones where they have a chance to start interacting with each other. And that allows them to start becoming more flock-oriented and a little wilder. We also have to feed them market-bought food and forest food to transition so they can recognize their own food. Because if they've been away long, they might not know what they're supposed to eat. We also offer them enrichment, all kinds of stuff from the forest. Leaves, sticks, anything we can find. This bird in this picture right here, it was released on October 25th of this last year. You're going to see a video of that release. And that is, again, a Seram, a Moluccan cockatoo, or as we like to call them, Seram, because that is where they're from. And the video is going to show you through we're going to go through the whole kind of process. Now, here we go. This is a rainforest clinic. We don't have any power. We don't have any refrigeration. We don't really have a clinic. We have a building that's falling down. And you're dealing with 120 to 140 free-flighted parrots that are wild. It gets really exciting when you're trying to handle them and do testing. So in this particular time when we did the testing, we actually got a gas-powered generator so we could run the microscope. And other than that, we basically did it all by ourselves. And again, you saw we would just have a scale and we would take the cockatoo, wrap it up in a piece of sarong, drop it down real quick onto the scale, take it off, everybody do the thing, band it, microchip it. And it was a very long couple days, but we got them all done. Now, tame birds to rehabilitate is a big problem. And we are facing that problem because although we're getting birds that are confiscated from the illegal trade, we're also getting birds that were pets. Pet birds have been chained to perches, they've been pinioned, they've probably never eaten the right thing, they may have come in as a baby, and so they have a lot of things that they can overcome. And we're not really sure what we can do. The bird in this picture is named Apple. Apple was confiscated in 2005, and Apple is still at the rescue center because Apple is just a big ball of petness, just not, it doesn't have, Apple's a sweetie. So everybody loves Apple. But Apple can't go anywhere. So we have to think about sanctuary situations or other things that we can do, learning centers, because there's going to be a percentage of those birds that will not be able to either be returned to the wild because they're tame or because of health issues. So think about it, if a bird's wings have been clipped forever, it doesn't know how to fly, it doesn't have any parents to teach it, it doesn't know what to eat. So what we have to do is we have to try to do what we can to move them into at least the socialization area. There are definitely some potential problems due to latent diseases in the release programs. There's a lot of release programs around the world. Quarantine by itself may be insufficient to detect many subclinical diseases. Some diseases may remain undetected for over a year, and they could kill the host or spread to other birds. This bird has beak and feather. That's the worst I've ever seen, a beak and feather. It's terrible. That bird was in a bird market for sale. It's possible for birds to develop resistance to clinical diseases and become carriers. When you go to an aviary where there's no resistance, there can be disease outbreaks. So you have to be very careful. The other thing is if the bird has gone to a middleman or a trafficker and then come back to the facility, that bird could have been exposed to disease. So we have to be really careful. And of course, aspergillosis, avian tuberculosis, or some of those are up to animal care workers, but we don't particularly care. It's funny, at the facility after H5N1, they all got scared about getting avian influenza, So they started all wearing masks, and they were like, it's hot there. It's like 100 degrees. It was raining, and you're sweating, and you've got this mask on. And so we just basically wanted them to see that we weren't scared, and so one of us slept in the cage with the birds with no mask on, just to prove to them that we weren't going to die. When we had our facility at its stop, when it was screaming busy and big, we did all of our PCR testing. We can't do that as much anymore now that we've turned it over to the local community, but birds were screened for beak and feather, for pachecos, for polyomavirus, chlamydiosis, aspergillosis, Newcastle, and avian influenza. Again, it's the problem is going out there is to treat them is that there's no refrigeration. It's really hard to kind of figure out the proper way to do this, but we've been pretty successful. I'm pretty proud. Another thing that's very important when releasing birds back into the wild is they must go to their endemic forests. CITES, IUCN, BirdLife International agree that there's significant risks both non-native and native species when they're reintroduced or put into a new environment. You have to basically check the genotype and find out if it matches the birds, check the area, be absolutely sure you've got the right species or subspecies before you consider releasing them. And for instance, on Seram, which we'll talk about the rescue center, we have 37 galleritas there. Galleritas are cockatoos that are from Papua. We're not in Papua, we're in Seram. If we would release those particular birds in Seram, it would be a disaster because there would be different issues with habitat, foodstuffs, interspecies aggression. They wouldn't recognize their predators, its weather's different, everything's different. And that could cause a really bad shift. One thing that we don't really have as much control as, because we're here in the United States, and we're working with the grace of God in Indonesia. They've been great to let us be there, but we have to be very careful. And it's a very politically charged kind of a place. This is great. That's a hornbill down there. That's Peter. See, he's wearing his mask. And again, these are all former trappers. And the thing is with having former trappers and doing your ecotourism program is they know where the birds are. They always know where the birds are, which is really amazing. I mean, and they can climb trees and they can do things that you wouldn't think a person could do. They're amazing people. They're all dear friends of mine. And what we're going to do is I'm going to transition from this into a video. It's going to basically go through the whole process from trapping and smuggling to the release procedures, and you're going to see a couple of releases as well. So you're going to get a chance to see what it's like. The last release was, I said, October 25th, and we released 9 more Moluccan cockatoos back into the wild. So we've released a total of about 150 Moluccans over the last few years into the wild, back into the forest homes. We've released birds in Papua, and we still have birds at the facility that need to go to other islands, but we haven't quite figured out how to get enough money to do that yet. So we do a lot of fundraising as well. So I'm going to switch over to the video. You should definitely check out that map. When you see where we work, you'll see how far it is. It will blow your mind. So I guess, thank you. You guys, thank you.